This is a live Channels Television event.
Well, you were watching the Conference of Leaders of Northern Nigeria organized by the Northern Elders Forum from Kano. Well, I'll take you over to Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, where the former Prime Minister of United Kingdom and former Prime Minister of Ireland visits Rivers State, and it's the International Conference on Democracy and Good Governance, which is being moderated by Professor Jack Straw.
Between the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth on the one hand, and Zimbabwe on the other, over its land policies. These talks in an Abuja hotel were reaching stalemate until President Obasanjo arrived unexpectedly. He briefed himself on why we had stopped negotiating, asked a couple of pointed questions, and then simply sat there in the corner of the room, glowering at us, until we became so scared that we reached agreement. And we did. Thanks to his intervention, we reached this agreement. It was signed and sealed. And had it not been for the cataclysm of 9/11, which occurred the following week, and which drew international attention away from Zimbabwe, I believe that this Abuja agreement, brokered by President Obasanjo, would have been implemented and could have led to a much happier decade for all Zimbabwean peoples. September the 11th, 2001 was the single worst terrorist incident the world has ever seen. In the United Kingdom, we've not been immune from jihadist terrorism, with 7/7 on the 7th of July 2005, when nearly 60 people lost their lives in bombings on the London transport network. But I am acutely conscious that here in Nigeria, innocent peoples of all religious beliefs continue to lose their lives on a scale almost unimaginable to us in Europe as a result of the brutal nihilist actions of Boko Haram and associated terrorist groups. I'd like to offer the relatives of all the victims my deepest condolences. And I know, as a former British Home Secretary, just how hard it is in such a situation to achieve the right balance between an effective security response on the one hand and ensuring that basic rights are maintained so that the majority are able to go about their lawful business. I mentioned my first visit as Foreign Secretary in early September 2001. That was followed by two other visits, with Her Majesty the Queen on her state visit in December 2003, and then in February 2006, which included a memorable visit, at least for me, to this great city, Port Harcourt. However, the first time I ever set foot on Nigerian soil was in early 1971, many years before I became Foreign Secretary, when I was on my way to Ghana for a Commonwealth Conference of Student Leaders. In the intervening 4 decades, Nigeria has many achievements to its credit. It has, first of all, survived as a nation. As Europe contemplates the centenary of the outbreak of the First World War in the summer of 1914, we still face many sharp reminders on our continent of how ethnic and religious divisions can provoke untold violence and misery, and with it, the redrawing of the political map. We saw this in the Balkans in the 1990s. We may, regrettably, be witnessing the same in the Ukraine at the moment. During that fateful year of 1914, in an exercise of imperialist convenience, as you all know, the Northern and Southern Protectorates and the Lagos colony were bolted together to form what has become this extraordinary, bombastious nation of Nigeria. With 36 states, the confessional division between Muslim and Christian, hundreds of separate ethnic groups, over 500 living languages, and all the tensions from these differences or potential tensions exacerbated by large-scale geographical and personal inequalities, not to mention the civil war, the determination of Nigerians that they are better together, stronger by maintaining the territorial integrity of this nation, is remarkable. And since we in the United Kingdom at the moment are facing a referendum in Scotland as to whether Scotland becomes independent, one of the arguments I shall be using is that Nigeria, with more differences between them, has stayed independent, and it's the better for it. Nigeria, if you allow me, has so much going for it. They've got 4G everywhere, Mr. Straw. We haven't. A young woman who's helped organize this trip told me in envious tones. With an average annual growth of 7%, a population 1/5 the whole of Africa, its flattering inclusion in the acronym of coming nations MINT, considerable international business interest, and a local economy that has remained strong despite recent dips in some emerging markets, with reforms of the business environment, the privatization of the power sector, and the establishment of a functioning sovereign wealth fund. There's much to be positive about. Add to that the prosaic but hugely important imminent rebasing of your GDP data, which is likely to show that total national wealth, as measured by GDP, is 40 to 60% higher than previously thought, to make Nigeria's economy the largest in sub-Saharan Africa. And add to all that the incredible, indomitable spirit of this country, and its future should and indeed can be a rosy one. However, I know of no Nigerian of any political persuasion who would not add a but to that long statement of the positives about Nigeria. And that but is, I surmise, the reason for this conference. That but is about how much further forward this nation could have been by now along the road of progress. How do you deliver democracy, nationhood, and citizenship with a proper balance of rights, freedoms, and responsibilities? To pick up the title of my lecture, for the benefit of every Nigerian. What is it that holds Nigeria back from fully achieving the objectives which it has set for itself in its own constitution? Now, I ask this question with some trepidation. I answer it with even more. This is your country, it's not mine. No invited visitor, as am I, would dream of seeking to take sides in the political debate here at any time, and least of all in the run-up to an election. But we can all learn something from the observations of critical friends and from the insights garnered from another country's experiences. And I offer my observations in that spirit. There can be few better crafted statements of the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy for any nation in the world than those to be found under this title in Chapter 2 of your current Constitution. Its sentiments are noble. The security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. The economy shall be controlled so as to secure the maximum welfare, freedom, and happiness of every citizen on the basis of social justice and equality of status and opportunity.